Number 26, find all the zeros of the polynomial function and state the multiplicity of each. And we've been given f of x equals negative 6x squared times quantity x minus 9 times quantity x plus 1 cubed. And we talked about in video number 5 that in order to find the zeros of a polynomial, what you first have to do is factor the polynomial completely, and then once you have your factors, set each factor of the polynomial equal, or rather independently equal to 0. All right, in this case, number 26, most of the hard work has been done for us because as we can see, we've been given a polynomial in factored form. So all we have to do is set each factor independently to 0 and solve. So in this case, we'll set 6x squared equal to 0. We'll set x minus 9 equal to 0. And then we'll set x plus 1 equal to 0. And we'll talk about what this power of 3 means in just a second. So let's go ahead and solve for x in all three of these factors here. So first things first here with negative 6x squared equals 0, let's divide by negative 6 on both sides. And by doing that, that leaves us x squared equals 0. And now we can take the square root of both sides. And recall that when you create your own square root, you have to do plus and minus. And so we end up with x equals, and plus and minus radical 0, well, we know radical 0 is just 0. So in this case, the plus and minus doesn't really have any effect because plus 0 minus 0, that's the same thing. And so we end up with x equals 0. Here in the middle, we're going to add 9 to both sides, and that'll leave us with x equals 9. And then here at the end, we'll subtract 1 from both sides. That leaves us with x equals negative 1. Now let's talk about the multiplicities for each of these zeros. Here we can see x equals 0 occurs only once, and so its multiplicity is simply 1. We can see x equals 9 occurs only once, so again, its multiplicity is only 1. Now it might look like x equals negative 1 occurs only once, but that's simply because of the way I wrote out the work. Remember, what does it mean when we raise some quantity to a power? Remember, this power tells us really how many times we could write this factor out. This is really a condensed form of the factor. What we could have written was negative 6x squared and then x minus 9. And for this x plus 1 cubed, we could have written x plus 1, x plus 1, x plus 1. So this power here, this 3, this cube, tells us that x plus 1 is a factor 3 times. So to save room, you can condense this and write it as x plus 1 cubed. But you have to remember when you're talking about multiplicities that this has a multiplicity of 3. It means it occurred 3 times, because if we set each of these now independently to 0, well, what would happen? We would still get 0 for the first factor here. We'd still get positive 9 for the second factor here. But now we would solve for x in each of these x plus 1. So we would get x equals negative 1, x equals negative 1, x equals negative 1. So when you look at it like this and ask that question, how many times does x equal negative 1 occur? Well, we can see that it occurs 1, 2, 3 times. So we have to make sure that we say our multiplicity for x equals negative 1 being a 0, that has a multiplicity of 3.